I present you Daisy Jenkins.
Good evening. Good evening. I told him I was loud. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Can you see me? Yes. Okay. So, and I'm sorry I coughed earlier. I forgot the mic was on. So, wow. I am just so thrilled to be here tonight. I thank Camille and Joanna, and oh my God, this is just amazing. I never knew about the Salon series. Why was it kept such a secret? I always claimed to know everything going on in Tucson. So I wasn't sure. I said, my goodness, who are these women? And what am I going to talk about? And I'm supposed to talk about, tell my story and my journey. And I'm like, I don't want to scare them or anything. But so maybe I'll have to think of which Daisy needs to show up tonight. So I said, you know, I'll think about the kind and that very gentle Daisy that makes everyone feel so incredibly at ease. Here's the sad thing. I could not find her. So you got the Daisy that everybody knows, and here I am. So, you wonderful women. So I thought about sitting down, but I'm not very good at sitting down. So I don't know where the best place to stand with these. So can I just roam? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm good at roaming. Okay. So why share my journey? Okay, what was the title again? No means not over. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to tell my story, I gotta tell a little bit of it, of all phases of it. And some of it's not so pretty. So at least I'm here so it has a happy ending. Okay? So I'm going to take you through the detours, the bumps in the road, so bear with me. And we're going to go on an interesting journey together. So the no that I'm talking about is not that no that don't touch me, that kind of no. Or no, Daisy, you know you shouldn't buy 6 pairs of shoes at Nordstrom. Not that no. This is the no that I say it stifles hopes and it promotes inequality. And it's a no that I have experienced for a long time, but I learned a long time ago, this no is not going to get the best of me. So I created a new acronym for no, and that is, it's not over. So we're going to talk about that. So this is kind of the content, and I won't bore you by reading all of it. I always bring notes, and I don't know why, because I never use them. So anyway, the one thing I can say about the no that I'm talking about, it's a small word with a big impact. And the impact when no stifles and the hopes and dreams, then when that no is final, there's that negative self-talk and self-doubt that makes you begin to wonder, well, I mean, can I really do this? Am I really a second-class citizen? Am I really in the wrong place? It lowers your expectations and demotivates you and make you want to give up. That's the kind of no I'm talking about. And then there's a lot of anger and hostility associated with that no, and it makes you get so daggum depressed at times, and it can just overwhelm you. And there's just an element of disillusionment and distrust with that no. But that's when no is final. But let me tell you, when no is not over, it's the opposite. Then you tell yourself, you know what? I don't care what this person thinks or what they say I can't do. I will show them. It's about the will to move forward when someone is trying to push you backwards. And it's about high expectations of yourself when others have low expectations. And I'm going to give you some examples of these kinds of things that have happened during my journey. And then it's about determination, perseverance, and tenacity, that you're going to get there in spite of all the odds. And it's about a lot of courage, because sometimes you just have to have the courage to take some folks to the woodshed and leave them there. That's what no, not over means. So, I was born into no. I was born in Georgia in 1948. Yes, I'm 70 years old, proud of it. And I lived in an environment, just to give you some examples of my no, where it was no, you cannot drink at that water fountain. You got to go to the one that malfunctions. No, you have to go to this school. No, you can't use this restroom. No, you got to go in this door. You can't go in that door. You could get arrested. No, you can't do that. No, no, no. And if you look at the women in that lower right? Yeah, okay. Sometimes I get them mixed up. And so those are black women, but they have very light complexion. And so even within our own community, someone my color was, no, you're not pretty, you're not light, you don't have long hair. I used to put a scarf on my head when I was younger and, you know, try to toss it around and pretend I had this long hair. And I had a girlfriend that was just, you know, beautiful and blonde, and I would go and spend the night, you know, at her home, which was so beautiful. And everyone would say, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. And then they would just look at me. Anyway, that was the no that I was born into. And then in 1960, we headed to California. And I was told that California was a land of milk and honey. And that when we get to California, you'll never have to worry about sitting in the back of the bus. You can live anywhere you want to. You can go to whatever school you want to. And it was like hoop to do. And my two sisters and I rode on a trailway bus. We were so excited. We rode for 3 days. They packed a lunch for us that we ate the first day. Thank God for kind people who took pity on 3 hungry kids on day 2 and 3. And so we started at the back of the bus. And I will tell you, we got to El Paso. And so we're like, okay, we're out of Georgia. We've been through Mississippi, all those places. So people in the front of the bus got off the bus, went into the restaurant. My sisters and I just hopped in and followed them into the restaurant. This was 1960. We got into the restaurant, and the guy says, sorry, we don't serve your kind here. And it was something that is just at the core. But there was an issue, there was something about humanity that happened that taught me in the midst of the most awful situation, there are good people. The bus driver, a white bus driver, said, "You girls, get back on the bus." It almost brings me to tears now. And he said, "I'll get you some food." And he did. And that was so impressionable because it was something that was so heavy in my heart for so many years. That kind of, no, you don't belong here. I wish I knew where it was now because I'd probably buy that sucker. But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, we got to California, the land of milk and honey, and my parents tried to buy the house and they said, "No, you can't live here." Well, wait a minute, that was in Georgia. This is California. The realtor, someone took the locks off the door. We bought the house anyway. And the funny thing, my mother had such an amazing sense of humor. She painted the house black. But anyway, and honest to God, truth, it's true. But it was a beautiful home, though. But anyway, so we went to integrated schools, and they said, because you came from the South, you're going to be behind. And I'm like, you don't know, no, not over. And so after graduating with honors and everything, my counselor said, "You are not college material. So no, what you can do," and I'm not in any way making disparaging remarks about these positions, but this is what she told me to aspire to. You could be a good nurse's aide, and you might even make it to secretary, but you are not college material. So at that time, they had a tracking system. And so you had to take these tests, and these tests were culturally biased. So I took my test, and I didn't have the vocabulary, or we didn't speak the certain vernacular in our home. So anyway, as smart as I was, I didn't score as high on the test. But let me give you an example of the questions on the test. So they show you a place setting. And on the place setting, it has a plate, it had a fork, it had a knife, and a napkin. And it said, "What's missing?" Well, if you're used to a plate and a fork, nothing is missing. I'm like, what are they talking about? And then you had to tell the difference between a mitten and a glove. Well, hey, I didn't have that. At any rate, I ended up in remedial English. But remember what I told you about the good people. So we had to write an essay in that class. And the professor said, "I need you to stay after class a moment." And I'm like, oh my God, was it that bad? And he said to me, "Why are you in this class?" And I'm like, oh my God. He said, "You don't belong here." It was too late to change. He said, "But you be my assistant, but you can write. You should not be in this class." And so that was no in the land of milk and honey. Little sour milk at times, and I didn't find the honey. And then in 1966, we moved to Tucson, Arizona. A young bride, and my husband in the military. So I'm giving you the journey so that you can understand what I was saying about no being not over and how you maintain that positive perspective in spite of all of these negatives. So how many of you, well, you guys are pretty young, who remember Steinfeld's? Oh, well, okay. All right. Steinfeld's department. For those of you who weren't around then, Oh, didn't they have the most beautiful Christmas decorations? It was the beacon of downtown Tucson, when downtown Tucson was something else. So anyway, Daisy goes to the employment office. I'm 19 years old, and I'll never forget this. My friend Carmen has heard it before, so she's already smiling. And so I go to the employment office, and I sit down, and, I let her know I'd certainly be interested in a sales job. And, she's looking at me, nodding. And so she starts talking to the personnel manager at Steinfels. And this is what she said. And I'll use Linda. I have this wonderful Negro girl. Her hair is nice, she speaks well, and she's dressed well. She wants to come over for an interview. And so the lady, the personnel manager at Steinfels, told her, oh yeah, send her over, no problem. So I'm like, well, maybe that little episode wasn't so bad after all. So I get to Steinfels, and I walk in, and she says, oh, you look just like she said. And, I smile and everything, and she said, yes, I like how you talk, dress nice, all of that. And she says, I have the perfect job for you. And I'm like, oh, this is really good. She said, you'll make the perfect elevator girl. So, no, not over wasn't in good fashion at that moment. And I didn't have the finesse and the poise that you see today. So I said to her, you can take that elevator and shove it up your ass. And I left in tears. By the time I got home, no, not over, she said, my husband said the lady from Steinfels called and you're hired. So I was their first African-American sales girl. And I worked in the men's department, and let me tell you, I was selling more little bikini underwear to these guys. So the next venture with No Not Over was the NAACP needed someone to be a test case at the telephone company in 1969. So they chose Miss No Not Over. So I go to the telephone company, I take the test, and they tell me, I'm sorry, you failed the test. I'm like, I thought that test was really, really easy. And they said, no, you failed it. So I went back to the group and said, no, they said I failed the test. And they said, no, we don't believe that. So they had to, I don't know, they had a subpoena or something. They had to get the test. So out of 100, I had scored 97. Oh my gosh. So then the gentleman, the personnel manager, said, but we can't hire her because she has a Negro accent and she will offend the customers. Well, he had to hire me. The law says you gotta hire. So I was hired. I would go into the cafeteria, people would walk out, but that's okay, Miss No Not Over. And so we used to get charms for selling to customers. Miss No Not Over had charm bracelets all over the place with her Negro accent. So at the same time, think about going into a cafeteria and people walk out when you come in. Think about not having someone to have a conversation with. So even when I say it's about positive self-talk and it's about self-confidence, there are days that you get so daggum angry, but you persevere because you say, I got to do this because it's not just for Daisy. This is opening the doors for someone else. And it was just an interesting point in time that, I don't know, it just stands out as part of my growth. I went to Honolulu, Hawaii, military wife. And I'm like, I know no doesn't exist in Hawaii. But I had an interesting no in Hawaii, and this was a gender no. So I worked on Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. And at that time, women were still struggling. And so one day it was pouring rain. I mean, torrential rain. And someone comes up to me and says, Daisy, it's your day. I was fairly new. And I'm like, my day for what? You have to go get the guys' lunch. And I'm like, it's raining out here. I mean, it's not only raining, it's storming. I know, but we take turns. I'm like, who are we? The women in the office, we have to go get the guys' lunch. That's a requirement. I'm like, hell will freeze over before I go get their lunch. And so I said, do they go get your lunch? And they go, well, no, they don't have to. You just have to go get their lunch. I said, I'm not going. So I was written up for being insubordinate. And of course, I made my case that that was discriminatory, that the women were the only ones that had to go get the lunch. I said, the guys go get my lunch, I'll go, I'll take a day, but they gotta have a day, period. So the rule changed. The guys had to start getting lunch, or somebody was gonna starve. And so you see me on the EEO committee because that was my opportunity to champion the rights of women. So no, not over means that sometimes when things happen, you gotta have the courage to stand up and say the good no. No, I'm not gonna go get your lunch unless you go get mine. And so it worked out. I mean, the guys got over it after a period of time. So I'm gonna move this toward the latter chapter when there were a few more yeses. But I was hired in at Hughes Aircraft Company, and I know I see some of my former Hughes friends there. Raise your hand so everybody will know who you are. Yay. And I had a master's degree. I was hired as the lowest level clerk in 1981. And actually, this was an African-American recruiter that hired me. And I said, Miss No, not over. That's okay, I'm just getting my foot in the door. In 5 years, I will be in management. And they go, yeah, you are nuts. You're a woman, you're black, and in this environment, you're gonna be in management in 5 years? Get over it, you really got a problem. Well, guess what? 5 years later, in management. However, it took a lot to get into management. And I was blessed with some strong sponsors. Good performance trumps a lot of isms. But I tell you, it's still a rough road. The performance, and then you gotta have some mentors and sponsors, and that's what I'm gonna talk about in a minute about what would be awesome to happen here. And then, and these were people who supported me, and everybody said they were the tough guys, they were the horrible, horrible old men. But that's okay, I stuck with them. I learned some bad habits from them, but, but they really taught me the ropes. And then one year I said, when I had reached that concrete ceiling, that I need to go to law school. And my dear friend Carmen Marriott, who was an attorney at that time, still is an attorney, and she was such a strong friend and mentor, and her boss, they sponsored me, but I was told, no, we're not going to send you to law school. We only send engineers to engineering school. So no, we're not going to send you to law school. Okay, no, not over. So I wrote this white paper of why it was so important for me to go to law school, because HR leaders of the future need law degrees, and how much smarter, and blah, blah, blah. They still said no. But it was during that time when I had been passed over for a promotion by a couple of guys who didn't even have nearly the experience and everything. And I said, well, you know, we can make a decision. I can go to law school, or maybe we can spend a little bit more time talking about these people who were promoted over me. Well, guess what? I went to law school. So sometimes you just got to use all the resources you got. But at any rate, after law school became Raytheon's first director of global diversity, and eventually became, in 2000, in their 75-year history, Raytheon's first woman of color vice president. 2000, 75 years it took